Hello and welcome to Media Monitor on the SABC News Channel, independent and impartial. Now this of course is where we take a look inside the world of media, analysing the trends, the issues and the reporting of some of the week's top stories. I'm Peter Ndoro. This is what's coming up on the show today. We'll be touching base with the South African National Editors Forum to unpack the newly announced COVID-19 relief fund for journalists. Now, a number of journalists in the mountain kingdom of Lesotho have banded together to start a union for journalists. We'll catch up with them. And in our Back in History feature this week, we take you back to the 20th of July 2003. And that's when Johannesburg's central skyline changed quite a bit with an iconic bridge. Find out more about that later in the program. For our international editor feature, we'll be heading off to Nigeria to find out about a story that was making headlines there this past week, where it was reported by several publications that a discovery for the COVID-19 had been found. Okay, so that's the show, but remember you can engage with us on social media using our Twitter handle, #SABC Media Monitor. We really look forward to hearing from you. You can also share your views with us on WhatsApp as well, by the way, and the number is 065 862 4548, 065 862 4548. Okay, so please get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. But before we get into our highlighted stories on the program, let's first take a look at what's on the front pages of our Sunday newspapers this morning. And we start with Sunday Times. Let's see what's happening there. The Sunday Times focuses on Gauteng province and what it's describing as an SOS call against the COVID-19 pandemic. The paper says that the provincial government wants the National Coronavirus Command Council to allow it to reintroduce hard lockdown regulations in an attempt to curb soaring COVID-19 numbers. The paper says that if approved, it could see South Africa's economic powerhouse being shut down for up to 2 weeks at a time. The City Press is leading with a story that the governing party, the ANC, is warning the SABC to stop its retrenchment process, allegedly with the party saying that if jobs are lost, it would embarrass the party and cost them votes during local elections next year. The paper says the SABC met party bosses at Luthuli House to discuss the corporation's plans to retrench 600 permanent staff members and cut 1,200 freelance contracts. The Sunday Independent is reporting a possible cabinet reshuffle motivated more by ANC politics than governance issues could backfire on President Cyril Ramaphosa, according to political experts. The paper says that ANC insiders claim that the aim of the reshuffle is to break up what they're describing as the KwaZulu-Natal cabal of Cele Mkhize and Dlamini Zuma. The Sunday Tribune is leading with a story of how allegedly top brass at the eThekwini municipality in Durban took delivery of brand new German sedans and SUVs this week because their current vehicles were deemed too old and faulty. Apparently this comes at a price tag though of 4 million rand and is being slammed by opposition council members. The Sunday World is running a story that apparently links an FNB boss to the VBS scandal, and also that the paper is reporting how VBS boss Matodzi was allegedly mentored by Stellenbosch tycoon GT Ferreira during a safari weekend of private jets, wine and desert rides on a special 6-wheel SUV. Ferreira had denied this, but when they showed him pictures, well, he had to say, "Oh, now I remember." Okay, so that's what's happening on the papers. We'll take another look at them a little bit later on when we do our newspaper review. But let's catch you up with what's happening on social media, because of course many people, that's where they kind of get most of their news. This was what was trending a short while ago. Let's take a look at the list of South Africa's top trends at the minute. And this is what we have. Kanye West, Blessed Sunday, these are usual ones. Sacred Space. Donald Trump, of course, yesterday was July the 4th in the United States, Independence Day. And Escape from Pretoria, that's a movie that's come out. But Kanye West, guess what? he's running for president. And so he made this announcement on social media, on Twitter, and people have been reacting to this message. This is it. This is what he says. We must now realize the promise of America by trusting God, unifying our vision, and building our future. I'm running for president of the United States. 2020. Well, obviously people have been wondering what that might mean, and someone says Kanye becomes president, then Kim Kardashian will release a makeup collection called The First Lady. And then, yeah, look, I mean, the rest of it is pretty self-explanatory. Kanye says, I'ma let you finish. And so that's what's been coming through on Twitter and social media with Kanye West running for president. All right, stay with us. Right, the South African National Editors Forum, SANEF, is launching a relief fund for journalists who've lost their livelihoods as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. According to SANEF, a team has been set up to help with applications that includes media stalwarts, Matata Tsedu, Joe Tlolwe, Wandile Fana of the Association of Independent Publishers. Well, to tell us a little bit more about this, I'm now joined by SANEF Director Kate Skinner. Kate, a very good morning to you. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. All right, so this fund sounds like a great idea. What informed it?
So we did a whole lot of research in June where we were looking at the impact of COVID on the media industry, and we from the research it became quite clear that a huge number of journalists had lost their jobs, and these were journalists, a lot of community media journalists, and also a lot of freelancers had lost their contracts, and you know, from the research we the figures looked at 700 journalists losing their jobs, which is a huge number because already so many journalists have lost their jobs, you know, in the industry, in fact, before COVID. And so the reason behind launching this fund was to deal with emergency issues. So we wanted to assist journalists with a small donation of 5,000 Rand, and basically we were looking at, you know, money for food, money for clothing, you know, basically emergency funding.
All right. So how is it going to be funded?
So we were incredibly lucky because MTN actually approached us and said to us, we have got 500,000 and we would like to put this into your fund. We've heard that you're wanting to put together an emergency fund. And they said to us, we will start off your fund. Our sense is that we will put in the initial 500,000 and then we will talk to other CEOs from other companies, and we will encourage them very strongly to also put in funding. And further to that, when we actually announced the fund, the wonderful thing was that a number of individuals also said, you know, we would love to put in you know, small amounts of money, but whatever we can find, because we believe in journalism, we know, you know, the state that the industry is in at the moment, and so the 500,000 starts us off, but hopefully we're going to get further funding, you know, from a whole range of people.
Yeah, and who qualifies then for this funding? Because you know, anyone can wake up in the morning and say, I'm a journalist.
Absolutely. So I think that's where it becomes very important, the criteria, but also, you know, the process. So the people that can apply are people that have lost their jobs, you know, people that were permanently employed, and they've got to have proof. They've got to put documentation together and submit that. And also freelancers, you know, have lost contracts because of COVID. And again, they need to put forward documentation. And we've got a whole process to verify and check that. So we've got Anlo Financial Services looking at all the documentation, verifying and checking all of it. And then, of course, we've got our panel of media stalwarts that will also be looking at each and every application. So we believe the combination will in fact make sure that, you know, only bona fide people will basically be able to apply and will be able to get the funding.
And is it a once-off payment, though?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
so we've looked at the 500,000 rand that we've got. That means that you get 100 journalists will benefit from this. They will each get 5,000 rand, and yes, it's a once-off benefit. But if other corporates come to the party and we get money from individuals as well, we could have a second round.
All right. So, how do journalists get hold of you and try and get into the system?
So all the information is on the SANEF website. So that's www.sanef.org.za. So if you look at our homepage, all the information about how to apply, the criteria, and email addresses and everything is all there. And also, if you want to contribute to the fund, all that information is also on the homepage of the SANEF website.
All right, Kate, I want you to stand by because there's a number of things that I want to talk to you about. And the next thing is the SABC has launched its editorial policies after a wide consultation. Among some of the changes were the controversial position of the corporation's editor-in-chief. The new policies give clarity about the editorial decision-making, now resting with the SABC's head of news.
The upward referral policy for news editorial decisions was put in place during the tenure of controversial SABC Chief Operations Officer Hlaudi Motsoeneng. It has now been reversed following consultations with the public.
The regulator has a complaints tribunal that actually looked into this, and given the fact that they felt that the SABC didn't properly consult, and therefore gave a directive that the SABC must go back and consult again on all those policies. So we started that process in 2017 with the new board and consult across the country, across the 9 provinces. After we have done that, the board considered in terms of the various submissions that were made and amended the policies according. So this is a revision of the policies based on the submissions from the public.
Head of SABC News, Phakiso Makopeni, has hailed the move.
What is happening now is that the journalists within the newsroom have full accountability for what has to be decided in terms of who we cover, how we cover them, and how we reflect the voices. So what is being done is to restore the full editorial control of the newsroom to the newsroom.
All right, so that's the editorial policies that have been launched, and SANEF welcomes that, Kate.
We absolutely welcome them. It's been a long process around this. I mean, the first editorial policies came out in 2004. And in fact, there was a whole process under Hlaudi Motsoeneng, where Hlaudi Motsoeneng basically put himself as COO, as the editor-in-chief. And a number of civil society organizations fought against that. That was Media Monitoring Africa and SOS. Also, I think Freedom of Expression Institute as well. And it's absolutely correct that one of the most controversial things has been around, who is in fact the editor-in-chief? Where does editorial decision-making, in the final instance lie? And we absolutely welcome the idea that it is in fact the head of news, because what that means is that then there's much less interference in the newsroom. And also other decisions, corporate decisions, financial decisions, decisions of executive management, then are not, those people in those positions are not making decisions about news. Journalists and the head of news are making decisions about what should be there in terms of news. And so we certainly welcomed it. And the final, and the fixing of that controversy, which has been there for a number of years.
All right, so, but that wasn't the only thing, was it? I mean, there's also the press code to digital publishing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the other thing, of course, that we were very happy about was the issue around the press code. So we've always supported the press code, at SANEF. We believe the press code is very comprehensive. It looks at all kinds of issues around ethics and the media. It's gone through so many different iterations, and the fact that the editorial policies of the SABC are now aligned to the press code, we believe is very strong. Also, I mean, when the first editorial policies came out in 2004, the issue of digital platforms, of course, was not a big issue, and news on these other platforms, other than the normal broadcast, wasn't an issue. So, of course, these are all completely updated, these editorial policies, to look at news on these different platforms. And so again, it's, now they're real up-to-date 2020 policies, and that was also essential.
All right, and in the end, the public, for the public broadcaster, for the public is the real winner.
Completely, because I think that you want to make sure that your public broadcaster is held to account in terms of ethical, balanced, quality news. And it's absolutely essential that you have editorial policies in place that talk to that. And now we've got them. It's been a long process, but I think that, if you look at all the different civil society organizations and their comments on these policies, they have been very positive.
All right, okay. One last story that I want us to touch on as well. And the SA Editors Forum has been asking for an inquiry about a reporter for the news channel Newsroom Africa who was shot in the face during a protest at Kanyamazane in Bombela on Monday this past week. Mweli Masilela was injured when police fired bullets to disperse protesters. He was covering a protest by taxi operators in Kanyamazane township outside in Bombela in Mpumalanga. There was a standoff between police and taxi operators over the decision to load taxis at 100% capacity. Masilela said that it was clearly visible that he was a reporter and that he was carrying a video camera and tripod. He added that the police didn't even give a warning to people to retreat. He has opened a case against the police. All right, so Kate, this was a concern for the SA Editors Forum.
Yes, absolutely a concern. Quite horrifying if people have seen the photographs. He literally was shot in the face, and I had a conversation with him, and he said that it was unbelievable. There was just no time at all to get out of the way, and he literally felt like he was, directly targeted, which is quite horrifying. So yes, as SANEF, we've been constantly in contact with the police throughout the whole COVID period. Every single time there's been an incident, and there have been quite a few incidents, some quite horrifying as well. Paul in Toba, who in fact escaped to Lesotho because he was so badly beaten by the police. So we've been in constant contact with the police. They are absolutely aware of this case. It was very important, that Mweli actually went and laid a charge, because in fact it's very difficult for the police to deal with things unless a charge has in fact been laid. So the charge is there. The police have promised to deal with it. And in fact we are going to be having an online meeting with the police, because although we've been in constant contact with them, we feel that actually it's important now to actually officially meet to discuss these various incidents.
Is this, you mentioned the other case of in the Free State, but is this something that you're seeing as an increasing trend where journalists are either being injured or being harassed during this COVID-19 period?
So we've kept very close track of this, and there are quite a few incidents, and so hence the need for us to actually meet with the police, because we have been worried about the fact that police on the ground, and you're quite right. It's two things that have been happening. One is that they've been harassing journalists, and the other issue is that they just seem to be very gung ho. The levels of violence are very scary, and so we believe that it is important to informally constantly raise these issues, but then also formally raise these. The other thing that we've been worried about is the fact that it doesn't seem that the police that are directly involved in these harassment cases, and violence cases, have in fact been prosecuted. And we're saying that there's got to be consequences, because if there are no consequences, then there isn't, it's not going to stop this happening in future. And so those are the kinds of things we're going to be raising in our meeting.
All right, well, we wish you the best of luck, and we'll catch up with you soon afterwards, hopefully to get some feedback. Kate, always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much indeed for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right, so that was Kate Skinner, Executive Director at the South African National Editors Forum, speaking to us about a number of issues, including SABC's new editorial policies, and of course that sad case where a journalist at Newsroom Africa, the news channel, was shot in the face by rubber bullets that the police fired, and he was carrying his equipment, so it was easy to recognize that he was a journalist. All right, so we're going to take a quick break, and after that we'll take you to Lesotho, where we're hoping to find out about a newly formed journalists' union there.
If you haven't called Outsurance to find out if they can save you money on your car insurance, you're in luck. Because if they can't beat what you're currently paying, now you can ask them for 500 Rand. And if you've been with the same insurer and claim-free for the past 3 years, then tell them you want a massive 1,500 Rand. Savings or cash, you always get something out. SMS card to 44211 or call 08600 60,000 for a quote.
With the COVID-19 pandemic disrupting livelihoods, farmers have been struggling.
We lost a lot of cows through drought. We're hoping to recover after all this because we're looking at a breeding strategy.
Farmers in the Karoo have been stricken with hardship.
Ek dink boere moet geleen tot maksimum bedrag wat hulle kan leen. En jy het 'n plaas om aan die gang te hou. Jy het voer wat jy moet koop, jy het werkers wat jy moet betaal.
We are intervening such that our people are not devastated by the COVID-19.
It's our mandate as SABC News to bring you factual and accurate coverage amid the COVID-19 pandemic. And from the Northern Cape, we'll keep you up to date with all the latest. Remember to wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Alternatively, use alcohol-based sanitizer and don't touch your face. The SABC is your reliable source for independent and impartial coverage. Make sure you use all SABC platforms and follow our reporters locally and abroad for all the news that matters.
The national lockdown due to the coronavirus may have dire consequences for the legal fraternity.
A new strategy will be implemented to deal with hotspots.
This is the agenda. I'm Blaine Herman. Our sign language interpreters are Pumza Sikumba and Fortune Mandlala.
The United Nations in South Africa has lauded President Cyril Ramaphosa.
President Ramaphosa says government will continue to welcome different and dissenting viewpoints around its national coronavirus response.
Well, the COVID-19 pandemic underlines the plight of the poor and destitute daily.
SASSA has received a record number of applications for the special COVID-19 social relief grant.
Medical aid costs for COVID-19 admissions, including the medical aid payment holidays, are becoming a concern.
South Africa has registered its biggest daily spike in new cases of coronavirus.
In the last 24 hours, coronavirus-related fatalities have gone up.
Most of the world tries to slow the spread and limit the death toll of COVID-19.
Cases continue to rise, including the death toll, obviously not necessarily commensurate with earlier.
We live in a new high-tech environment. Because of technology, some of the world's wealthiest people are tech entrepreneurs. Tech is how we play and how we work. For your tech conversation, join me, Phumelele Zondi, on Network every Sunday at 8:30 p.m.
national lockdown due to the coronavirus may have dire consequences for the legal fraternity.
A new strategy will be implemented to deal with hotspots.
This is The Agenda. I'm Blaine Hammond. Our sign language interpreters are Pumzasi Kumba and Fortune Mandela.
The United Nations in South Africa has lauded President Cyril Ramaphosa.
President Cyril Ramaphosa says government will continue to welcome different and dissenting viewpoints around its national coronavirus response.
Well, the COVID-19 pandemic underlines the plight of the poor and destitute daily.
SASSA has received a record number of applications for the special COVID-19 social relief grant.
Medical aid costs for COVID-19 admissions, including the medical aid payment holidays, are becoming a concern.
South Africa has registered its biggest daily spike in new cases of coronavirus.
In the last 24 hours, coronavirus-related fatalities have gone up.
While most of the world tries to slow the spread and limit the death toll of COVID-19,
Cases continue to rise, including the death toll, obviously not necessarily commensurate with earlier.
The fact that I will not go home and be 100% sure that I am safe is a problem to me. The fact that I sit with two of my friends and two of us have been raped is a big problem. Me speaking here is not a problem.
At what point do things turn from you seeing me as the queen that I am to a doormat?
This is a fight that we need to fight every single day. And it's probably going to be a fight that we have for the rest of our lives.
Why is it important for the public to get involved in this discussion?
Virtually all municipalities are putting in bids to have their salaries increased. Councillors and municipalities around the country are oblivious to the fact that there's a pandemic out there that has created economic havoc in this country.
How does SALGA respond to that?
There is no municipal that has asked for an increase. We have then said to councillors, a council will sit, look at the gazette that has been provided, and it provides an upper limit of 4% for this current financial year for public representatives.
We're trying to say to the municipalities is get in touch with reality. You cannot simply sit back and say it's business as usual.
Many of our councillors have taken that, and we have seen how they have made a contribution by responding to the clarion call of the president.
Parcels are being prepared for the most vulnerable and needy.
Even those with money are holding on to their money. We don't know how long this is going to last.
Desperate community members in Mamelodi turned to the Baptist Church for relief.
We started with about 50 people from the community, and then the numbers got bigger and bigger.
This community has more than 6,000 residents. The mining sector only allowed 50% of their workforce.
We are still in the dust, we are still in poverty.
The miners are not helping us with anything. I'm so happy to have received food parcels because I have no income.
If there's one thing that we have learned from COVID-19 is that we are all in this together.
With everyone being affected with COVID-19, as a show that brings hope and inspiration to the marginalized, the team decided to lead from the front in such trying times.
If you are doing the little bit that you can with what you have, you can let us know on social media. Just use the hashtag StoriesUntold SABC. Alternatively, catch up with our shows on YouTube. You can search for Stories Untold SABC.
Welcome back. You're still watching Media Monitor. Now, a group of journalists in neighbouring Lesotho have come together to establish a union of journalism. The union is meant to address journalists' poor working conditions, low salaries and revising of policies to protect journalists. So let's find out a little bit more about this union of journalists. And I'm now joined by Pascalina Kabi, who's a journalist in Lesotho. Pascalina, thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome to you.
You're welcome. Thank you for hosting me.
All right, so Pascalina, I thought that there've been journalists' unions in Lesotho over the years.
Yes, we've had one which took off a couple of years ago, but unfortunately it didn't materialize. We have tried to make efforts to resuscitate it, but we realized that it was a futile exercise that has taken us a couple of years to resuscitate. So now we have taken a decision that it is best to start afresh and come up with a new name, a new constitution, and see how best we can change the narratives in the country for journalists.
All right, so why is it important to set one up? What are you hoping it will do?
We've had a couple of challenges as journalists in Lesotho. One, the working conditions are not conducive, but there is we don't have a body that can take up those issues with our respective employers. We don't have a law governing the fraternity in Lesotho. So those are some of the issues that we say, that for us to be able to operate in a conducive environment and deal with issues of polarizations that have been raised by a couple of bodies over the years, we need to come together, establish a body that will govern the fraternity and ensure that we don't just demand that the environment is conducive for us to operate, but at the same time, we practice the professionalism that we preach about, and that body will oversee that whole process.
All right, I want you to stay with us, Pascalina, because on the line we have Tebogo Molifa, who's a news editor at Public Eye newspaper, and also the interim chairman at Editors Forum of Lesotho. We're hopefully going to try and get him back on the line. It's just dropped on us at the last minute, just to get his thoughts as well. So what you're describing is a labor union in the truest sense of the word.
Yes, that's what we are looking to establish. Look, Peter, with the COVID, we've seen how bad it has affected people around the world, but the journalists are not immune to those challenges. We've had a couple of us who've been retrenched from their workplaces. Some have taken a salary cut, and there is literally no an institution that is looking over those issues and see how best the journalists can be cushioned during these difficult times. Most of us, we live from hand to mouth, and losing a job just like that, it's really disheartening. It's affecting us in a way that we cannot even begin to explain. So we are saying that establishing a union who address issues such as this one, we are admiring the South Africans with the SANEF setting up a relief fund, but as the side, we really don't have any fallback plan, and nobody is coming to the party to assist us.
Has there been no type of labour federation in Lesotho that could include journalists, much like we have commercial workers union here in this country, communications workers? Is there nothing like that in Lesotho where you could have been included?
No, there isn't. The vibrant unions this side are particularly for the factory workers, but we haven't really sat down with them and see how best they can include us in their unions. But we feel that since media is a bit technical, we wanted a union that will know how to address our issues with that experience. You know, when one is on the ground, they know exactly what is happening. It's easier for them to hear journalists rather than trying to get into a union that really knows nothing about our operations. So we feel that it's best that we establish one that will address our own issues as the media fraternity.
Very specialized indeed. Okay, I think we've got Tebogo on the line. Tebogo Molifa is the interim chairman of the Editors Forum of Lesotho. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. We've been chatting to Pascalina about the need for this union to come together. And I just wonder what is going to be different to this union to the ones in previous years that you've tried to resuscitate but found challenging?
Well, our main problem is that we have a highly polarized media, and the world, because of that, particular media houses and particular journalists tend to stand for their own interests. And we always had a feeling that it's high time that we get together and have a strong one voice that can talk to government, talk to other stakeholders about real issues that concern us, that issues that hamper freedom of expression and that enable our working conditions to be proper so that we deliver. So what we are trying to do right now is to pull everybody together so that we just stand as one and try to professionalize everything in our trade.
About how many journalists are you hoping will probably fall under this union if everybody joins in? How many people could you be helping?
In terms of media houses.
Sorry?
You mean how many people in terms of our reporters or in terms of the people that we are reaching out to?
How many journalists are working in Lesotho that could possibly become members of this union?
A couple of hundreds, I think.
All right. So a few years ago, we saw journalists going through quite a bit of harassment from the authorities, some even having to flee the country. And I just wonder, will these be some of the issues that you'll be addressing once this union is up and running?
Particularly that, because like I was talking about a polarized media, government and politicians tend to pick particular media houses, radio stations or newspapers, put them in their pockets to advance their own interests. So the moment our journalists do not follow whatever they are being instructed to do by those who have them in their pockets, they get victimized. And when we have a single voice, it is easier for us to directly talk to government or other stakeholders and, take that course forward.
Right. Pascalina, COVID-19 talks about retrenchments. What are the other issues that are really big concern for journalists generally? I guess, like some of us, we talk about pay as one of them. That we wish that our newspapers, magazines would pay us more.
Yes, it is one of the issues that is really thorny in this fraternity in Lesotho. Like I said earlier, most of us are living from hand to mouth because the salaries that we are earning are not even covering our very basics. So these are some of the issues that we want to address because right now there is no body that is regulating salaries in the media fraternity. You'll find that somebody who is a junior probably earns higher than their own seniors because there is no there isn't any entry level that is described by law that journalists are supposed to be paid this and that. And it's what you earn as a journalist in Lesotho is basically how good you are with negotiating with your employer. And again, you find that the very same salary, maybe if you manage to negotiate a good salary 2 years ago, it will not be increased unless you go back and try to negotiate. We don't have any bargaining activities that we can do with our employers, and the union that we are seeking to establish is going to deal with those issues and say that if we have a certain percentage of membership in your company, that the union will be able to come in and do negotiating, bargaining with a certain employer and ensure that annually salaries are increased based on the recession. So it's gonna be a long road ahead, but we've put on our seatbelts and we are trying as much as possible to see how best we can address these challenges.
All right, and then perhaps finally, Teboho, if you could just give us an idea about whether freelancers are going to be included in this equation or not.
They've got to be, because you have to cater for everybody who is writing, who is a journalist. So it must cover almost everybody.
The authorities, have you spoken to the Department of Labour equivalent in Lesotho about this union you're wanting to form?
Not yet, because we are still trying to shape up the union and the interests that it's going to cover. But as soon as that is done, we are planning to get in touch with the Minister of Communications, and probably getting talking to him will be able to see how other labor-related issues in our trade are addressed.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very much indeed, Pascalina. Thanks so much indeed for joining us, and we wish you the best of luck with this endeavor. And to Teboho, thank you so much indeed as well for joining us. All right, so now, just before we go to the break, thanks so much indeed for the messages that you've been sending through to us on WhatsApp, and let's take a look at some of those. Hi, Pete, I'd like to say Lala Ngokolo to Somizi's mother. Somizi, he must be strong, and God loves you, my brother. Yes, of course, legendary actress that passed away this past weekend. And another message here. Good morning. I want to take an issue with our journalists being biased with the Western Cape. The naked man transgressed a court order. Western Cape government was crucified. Popo Malifa told the commission the top 6 knew about PRASA corruption, and yet a denial was reported. Just like that, no vindictive journalism at all. All right, thanks very much for sharing your thoughts. We're going to be back right after this with more. Stay with us.
It's our mandate as SABC News to bring you factual and accurate coverage amid the COVID-19 pandemic. And from the Northern Cape, we'll keep you up to date with all the latest. Remember to wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Alternatively, use alcohol-based sanitizer and don't touch your face. The SABC is your reliable source for independent and impartial coverage. Make sure you use all SABC platforms and follow our reporters locally and abroad for all the news that matters.
Why is it important for the public to get involved in this discussion?
Virtually all municipalities are putting in bids to have their salaries increased. Councillors and municipalities around the country are oblivious to the fact that there's a pandemic out there that has created economic havoc in this country.
How does SALGA respond to that?
There is no municipal that has asked for an increase. We have then said to councillors, a council will sit, look at the gazette that has been provided, and it provides an upper limit of 4% for this current financial year for public representatives.
We're trying to say to the municipalities is get in touch with reality. You cannot simply sit back and say it's business as usual.
Many of our councillors have taken that, and we have seen how they've made a contribution by responding to the clarion call of the President.
Insofar as it makes it impossible for candidates to stand for political office without being members of political parties, the Electoral Act is unconstitutional.
With this judgment, I believe that we are put as South Africans on an equal footing.
What was started in 1994, there were pieces that were missing, and we believe that today some of those pieces have been put together.
Political parties must actually recognize this as a way of freeing themselves, because some of them got captured in the process.
What this means is that Parliament will have to find a mechanism to facilitate the participation by individual candidates in national and provincial elections.
As a Commission, we stand ready to work with Parliament.
Hello, welcome back. We head now to Nigeria for what can only really be described as a bizarre story. Since COVID-19 pandemic began, there's been a race across the world to find a vaccine for the virus. Well, along the way, a number of people have presented some natural herbs as a cure for the coronavirus. And one such person is a Nigerian woman who calls herself Prophetess Dupe Oluwanyi, who through a video that went viral on social media claimed that the flowering shrub in the sunflower family Siam weed is the cure for the novel coronavirus. She claims that the revelation came to her from God after prayer. This, as you can imagine, sparked a lot of interest, even with mainstream media. Well, Nigeria editor at Africa Check, David Ajikobi, followed this story and to check if this was actually true. And he joins us now from Nigeria. Thanks so much indeed for joining us, David. Welcome to the program. We've been hearing these stories across the continent, as far afield even as Madagascar, about natural herbs, finding cures and that kind of thing. Tell us why Africa Check decided to investigate this story.
Well, thank you very much, Peter. Like you mentioned, with the COVID-19 pandemic across the globe, and particularly in Africa, we've seen an upsurge in different scenarios where people claim to have the potency of certain natural herbs to either treat or cure or prevent the COVID-19 disease from the coronavirus, the novel coronavirus. And then why do we check this? Why do we check this claims? The idea is that if those claims are left unchecked, or if these so-called cures or so-called treatments are not investigated or scrutinized, or ask for veracity for people to actually verify or evidence to back up these claims, we think that it could potentially cause risky health behavior across the continent. I mean, you can imagine a case where people are poor, people are seeking for ways to just, get out of the coronavirus scenario. So people will most likely believe some of these things. For this particular case, for the Siam leaves and for so many other health-related remedies and cures that we've investigated. So essentially what we do is to first and foremost get back to the person who has made that claim to say this can cure, or this can prevent, or this can treat COVID-19. And when we get back to them, we ask them to, basic and simple questions around: can you provide evidence to back up this claim? Can you give us any scientific or peer-reviewed or scientific evidence to do so? And in most often cases, we don't get any. Sometimes we don't even get a response. And we all understand that the World Health Organization is very clear that at the moment the virus is still very new. A lot of things are still very unknown about the virus and the disease itself. There's no cure for it as we speak. Yes, there's a lot of research going into development of a vaccine. There's still none has been produced yet with the work that is going on. A few treatment courses, pathways have been established by the World Health Organization.
So bottom line, what you're saying is that this woman was just making claims and that there's no science to back her case.
There was no science to back up the claim that Siam leaves can either prevent or cure coronavirus. Yeah.
So how did the media cover this story? Did some of the newspapers treat it as if it was true, or what happened?
Well, I think that it was well covered in the newspapers and even on social media, particularly on Facebook. We saw that this particular one was spreading on Facebook, and we decided to check it because it was. The numbers on Facebook were very high. Newspapers actually covered it because some journalists, I wouldn't say all, because of the news cycle to push out all sorts of related news around COVID-19 as much as possible. I think there's going to be cases where unverified, unsubstantiated claims around disease will filter through the media. But it is important for us as journalists in covering a disease like COVID-19 to make sure that those information are verified, by scientific evidence, peer-reviewed, and then there are several experts, you can actually speak to explain some of this. We all can't be scientists. We are all not scientists or biologists or whatever it is. But it's important to actually make sure that those claims or whatever is being reported in the media around this disease is evidence-based and is based on scientific evidence and it's factual.
So I'm fascinated by this woman, Prophetess Dupe. How is it that she was able to capture the hearts and minds and imagination of people?
Well, I think it's quite clear for a country like Nigeria, where we are very it's a very multicultural country. We are more than about 200 million people. It's a very multi-ethnic country and multi-religious. And religious leaders in my country have huge influence over people's behavior sometimes and faith and things like that. It's not just Professor Dupe. We've seen cases where a pastor of one of the biggest churches in Nigeria came out and said there's a link between coronavirus and 5G. That has been debunked several times by Africa Check and several organizations across the globe. There's no correlation between 5G and coronavirus. It's because the pastors and the religious leaders have that much of an influence on people, and so that is why you will see that when some of them make certain statements that are not substantiated or statements like this, people can go ahead and run with it. So you can imagine a case that if we did not verify it or fact check it or debunk this, there's a possibility that somebody who believes in her or who believes in what she says in her congregation could have probably gone to ingest siam leaves, could have probably gone to cultivate these things, could use concoctions and drink them or ingest them. And we all know that they could have very devastating consequences when you ingest substances that have not been proven to have specific health benefits or certain cures for a certain disease. It could also potentially lead to risky health behavior, which might include people not sticking to the guidelines. Because if you feel that my pastor has told me, I can cure coronavirus with siam or whatever it is, somebody might potentially say, I'm not going to go to the hospital. I'm not going to believe what the CDC is saying. I'm not going to observe certain guidelines. I'm not going to wear a mask or things like that. So you can see that it could lead to a chain of reactions. Health misinformation could lead to a chain of reactions, which also includes.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time and it's just run away from us. But thank you so much indeed for joining us on the program today. Fascinating story, and we're grateful that people like you, Africa Check, are making sure that the truth always gets told. Thanks so much indeed, David. All right, okay, we're going to move on and come back home, actually. We go back into our news archives and we take you back to the 20th of July 2003, and this is when Johannesburg's central skyline changed with the opening of an iconic bridge named after South Africa's first democratically elected president, Nelson Mandela. It was an architectural wonder. It's a large it's the largest cable-stayed bridge in southern Africa, and this is how the SABC covered the story on the day.
Johannesburg has a new landmark. It was opened today as part of marathon celebrations for Nelson Mandela's 85th birthday.
From now on, every time you see a picture of Johannesburg, this bridge will be in it. A tribute to a man who spent his life building bridges, Nelson Mandela.
For all of us, Nelson Mandela signifies this effort by all our people to bridge these things that divided them in the past, so that we're together, we're one people, we're one South African nation.
Then it was down to the man himself.
Happy birthday to you. Hip hip.
This gesture makes me very humble indeed.
It was christened by the patter of nimble feet. Among them, Geraldine Fraser Moleketi. Normally she runs the public service ministry. This morning, she ran the streets.
It feels good. Running for the rejuvenation of Johannesburg, running for the opening of Mandela Bridge.
When you think of London, you think of Tower Bridge. Think San Francisco and you think the Golden Gate. From today, when you think of Johannesburg, you will think of Nelson Mandela. The Nelson Mandela Bridge is more than just a beautiful landmark to honor Madiba, but it's yet another project by the Gauteng province to rejuvenate the city of Johannesburg. Hassan Munyala, SABC, Johannesburg.
Wow, what an iconic bridge and quite a spectacle. All right, and that's where we're going to leave it for today. Thanks so much indeed for watching our show, Media Monitor. We'll be back at the same time next week with more of the same. In the meantime, COVID-19 is real. All of us should be wearing one of these. Bye-bye.